Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel where we cover all things crypto from the perspective of a miner. So today's video, we're going to go over the last in the trio of these new Bitmain releases. We're going to go in depth on the new Handshake miner, the HS3. So we're going to go into profitability, we're going to look into what it looks like as far as the hash rate, as far as the network goes, and what kind of an impact this new miner is going to have. I'm gonna, talk a little bit about it to see why this is the most interesting one to me. This is kind of the reason I saved this one for last, because it's also the one that makes the least sense, right? So we're gonna go over as to why I'm thinking that, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit, and get our thoughts, and see if it's worth buying, right? See if it's even worth looking at. So if it sounds interesting, guys, stay tuned. So let's get right to it. So right off the bat, Handshake is a very small cap coin. That's a big part of the reason why I'm saying it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because this is not something that Bitmain typically goes after. We can see here on CoinMarketCap it's rated at number 628. Its whole market cap is only 13 million. Very, very tiny market. The only reason that would make sense for them to go after it is because of what we kind of like referenced in the other videos, is that it's a specific attack on Gold Shell. They are like going for them. They're trying to knock them out. And so far it's going to work, right? We've seen even with these new releases from Gold Shell, they're not even on the same level. It's a whole different level. It's a whole different ball game. It doesn't even look like any of the big guys coming out in the spring are going to be able to compete. And it's just not looking good for them, right? So that's the main reason that this one is so interesting, right? Because it's not something they would typically go after. Because again, it's very small network, not a whole lot of hype behind it. Most people don't even really know what it is. I think most people's, like my first introduction to it was when Gold Shell released those little miners for it. Otherwise, I had never really heard of it. But if you're unfamiliar, they deal with domains, specifically top-level domains. So it's kind of like, think of like ENS, things of that sort. Interesting project. If you actually look into it, it is interesting. There's just not much hype behind it. It's very decentralized. They're very big on not having even like a main Twitter account or anything like that, just to keep it fully decentralized. But there are a lot of YouTube videos. They do a lot of like presentations, things like that at conferences, and it is pretty interesting. Not necessarily the most hyped thing, right? But so let's talk about it. So we look here, again, we can see that they're ranked number 628. Coin price right now is 2 cents, 0.023 to be exact. Overall, looking at it from the beginning, they came out in early 2020. And at the peak, we hit right about, 77 cents, right? So pretty dramatic downfall. And again, it's because it is such a small cap coin, right? It'll fluctuate a whole lot more than any of these other projects just because that market cap is so tiny, right? So that's why the potential downfall is so much greater, but also the potential for the upside is so much greater because of that. Especially right now, if we look at the current chart, it is at the lowest that it has ever been, right? It's currently at the 0.023. We could see previously, early 2020, it went down to 8 cents. These other dips, it was in the 8-cent range, and that's pretty much the lowest it's ever been, right? So now it's a significant drop, right? So if it's a coin you're even somewhat bullish on, a lot of upside potential because it's such a small cap coin, right? So that's one thing to take into consideration. So now let's look at the actual miner itself, which went for sale on December 20th. And it was one of those that we knew was going to sell out. Again, they've been hyping this thing with selling out in under a minute. I think this one made it to like 40 something seconds. I think they advertised it as 20 something, but I did a little short just trying to see if I could add it to cart, and I was able to, right? So for those of you who actually were trying for it, it was a doable one. It was actually there for that one, but MSRP is $2,000. The stats are coming in at 9 terahash. 2079 watts, which is interesting, right? Considering this is, set up to be like a full-size miner, at least the pictures they've been showing. But the wattage is about a third down from typical. Typically, they're in that like 2800 to 3300 watt range. So it is an interesting size there. So yeah, it was $2,000 MSRP. Again, sold out instantly. Third-party vendors have it at about in this range, about $2,900 is what most people have them at. Specifically here on BT miners, they have it at $3,099. So 3,100 essentially, not $3,999. But you get the gist of it. You see it here. So let's look at profitability, right? So this has been an interesting one as far as researching profitability because ASIC miner value from the get-go has been off completely, right? It fluctuates anywhere from, depending on what day you check it, from like $5 to $7, and it's just because it's inaccurate, right? This is why I highly recommend for you to like double check numbers, especially with these smaller caps, smaller miner things. 'Cause a lot of times they don't even really pay much mind to it. But when we break it down, because the problem with like ASIC miner value doesn't give you a breakdown of the coins that you're actually going to make, right? So that's why I went on a couple different sources, one being like DX pool. And the advantage with using the calculators from the pool is that there's relevance to it, right? They actually run a handshake pool themselves. And like I personally don't have a handshake miner, so I can't 100% confirm it, but that's essentially like what I did with like the KDA hash rate. I was able to confirm it with mine, put it in there, see what was accurate, and was able to confirm it there. So again, you could use a couple sources. So like one we did here, we put in, because it has a breakdown as far as gigahash, right? But we know this is actually 9 terahash, which is 9,000 gigahash. So we would punch in the 9,000 gigahash, and we get this yield, 734. Again, we want to pay more attention to the yield right now, how much handshake we're actually getting versus the fiat value, right? We're confirming it with this, but ideally this is what we want to pay attention to because this doesn't mean much, right? This is what gives us the actual facts, the actual numbers regarding it. So I checked on here and then also went on Antpool since they are starting theirs as well. We go on theirs and same thing. We're going to punch in the 9,000 terahash and we're getting 724. So again, it's within that ballpark. That sounds fairly accurate. So we're going to go with that. And then to triple check it, I went on the CryptoCalc website. Again, punched in the numbers here, 9 terahash, 2079 watts at a 10-cent kilowatt hour. So again, we're not really paying attention. We're looking at the yield. So these guys have it at 656. But again, considering these other two had it over here, I would peg it more at that rate, right? So give or take, this is definitely going to be more accurate. Chances are it's going to be a couple bucks more. I would attribute it more to like closer to this range here. The one downfall with doing this is isn't going to take into account your electricity rate, right? But that is where these other ones will be accurate, right? So if we go into the HS3, we can see here the electricity is $4.99, and we know that is going to be accurate because that's based off of the wattage, right? We can confirm over here as well. Same exact rate, so it's $5, right? So considering that these were listing the profitability at about 17 or 15 bucks, we could take away the 5, so we're looking at like $11 to $12 profitability, right, at a 10-cent kilowatt hour. Okay, so again, referencing back to what ASIC miner value has it as, that's a pretty significant difference, right? They're listing it at $7. Again, I've seen it just earlier today. Actually, it was listing it at like $5.55. So again, this is why you do have to like deep dive into whatever you're doing, research it. Don't just take one site's word for it, right? A lot of times they don't pay attention to these things. They don't update these things. They don't update the difficulty or the hash rate change, especially with these smaller projects because the hash rate and the difficulty does fluctuate quite a bit, right? Because it doesn't take much to affect the network. Bitcoin and things like that, it's not going to fluctuate a whole lot just because there's so much hash on the network, right? But with these guys, even just like a few miners coming on could affect the difficulty. That's how small the network is. All right, so now we know, give or take, it's about 11, 12 bucks. And comparing it to anything else, the only other handshake miner that is currently profitable is the HS6. All right, we can see everything else is old, it's in the negatives, and it's all gold shell primarily, right? So again, this is why we've been saying that this is a direct shot at gold shell. There's literally no other reason for Bitmain to do it other than to just, take out gold shell, right? That's literally the reason. I don't see any other reasoning behind it other than that. But so yeah, so we can see that. So now let's look at the stats, right? Let's compare it to the competition. So the competition would be like the gold shell HS6. So we are going to break it down, right? Let's do an efficiency calculation. So for those of you guys been watching, you're starting to figure out how to do this. So we see the specs here, right? We're looking at 3250 watts, so 3250 watts, and we're going to divide it by that 4.3 terahash, right? The reason we want to do that is we want to see how many of the watts terahash rating, so we can see the efficiency of it, right? So this guy, the gold shell, it does at 755 watts per terahash. Okay, so keep that number in mind. So now let's look at the stats for this guy. So it is 9 terahash at 2079 watts. So we'll do the 2079 watts divided by the 9 terahash. And here's where the big difference is, right? The other one being at what, 755? This guy's at 231, right? So 231 watts per terahash. Pretty significant difference. Okay, let's kind of ballpark. Yeah, so it's about like, give or take, about 3.3 times more efficient than the gold shell HS6, which is the current gen. And there's no other competition. There's no other IB Link. There's no other. That's literally it, right? Significant difference. One kind of funny thing that we've been doing these calculations is that looking at the efficiency between them, if you look at them and compare them, it's actually very similar all across the board, right? If we look at the efficiency of the KA3, the K7, and now this guy, it is a very similar gain all the way through. To me, what that's saying is that they're using the same size chips for all these machines, right? So if we go by what Bitmain is currently using, we know that the S19 XP is using 5 nanometer chips. My guess is that that is what's in these guys, and that's the reason we're seeing that comparable gain all the way through. Whatever size chips Gold Shell's using has been the same all the way through, and then that's why this generation is so much more efficient. It's just kind of funny that the efficiency is like almost the same all across the board across the 3 algorithms. So just something to note there. So again, it's about 3.3 times more efficient, and obviously looking at the calculator is just way more profitable, right? One big difference though that Gold Shell does kind of have them on is that neat little feature that you can mine 2 different things. You can mine Sia Coin and Handshake on that one unit, which is kind of an interesting feature. No such thing on the Bitmain one though. At least that has been announced. I'm assuming it's just going to stay as is. They'll keep it like that. Because it does seem it was almost like a partnership with Handshake. For those of you who were aware of the pre-sale, right, when it went live, that morning, I think like an hour before it went live, they did like a Twitter Spaces with the Handshake team. There was a few people there. People were able to ask questions. One funny thing is that one of the speakers actually asked Bitmain directly, and I think it caught them off guard, how many units they were going to release. Obviously, it's not something they're going to divulge, but their answer was kind of interesting. And the answer was that they're going to try to limit the amount that they're releasing in order to not have such a great effect on the network itself. Which it was kind of funny to see them address that. It was kind of funny to see them like be off guard almost. But because of course that's the one big thing, right? That's the one big mystery with figuring out the true profitability is how many units they're going to release. And they don't want to divulge that information, which is kind of sketchy because they know how many they're going to release, obviously, and they know what kind of effect it's going to have on the network, which is going to affect profitability, right? It would give more credibility to them if they were to do that. Wouldn't be such a scummy move. But, of course, they want to keep it a mystery, and unfortunately, we're not going to find out until it happens, right? One other interesting tidbit was the 2 other releases, they were limited to 50 units. So for like the K7 and the KA3, it was limited to 50 per order. One interesting thing here is that they limited it to only 5, right? So obviously they're making a whole lot less. And to me, that's also why they chose the form factor that they did. So this one, again, the interesting tidbit with the specifications is the size of the unit as far as how much power it uses, only being 2079 watts, right? And I think they purposely did that so that they don't release as many units because they know it's going to affect the hash rate immensely, okay? We've done the calculations with like the K7 and the K3, how it's going to affect it. This one is even more drastic. That's why this one was kind of the most interesting one out of the bunch. So let's take a look at that now, actually. Let's segue into that. So looking up the hash rate, this is where it's kind of crazy. So the entire network, we can see going back a year, it's kind of similar to like with Nervos, where it's been in a downtrend. This one's kind of even more so, right? We can see back here, at one point, at one peak, we'll pick one of the peaks here, was at 15 petahash, right? Versus now, we're sitting at 3.52. It is a very, very dramatic drop, okay? That's a huge, huge difference. It's not like, half or that's a dramatic difference. Okay, and although it's unfortunate that a lot of these gold shell miners are going to become obsolete essentially, this is actually a good thing for the network. Okay, this is gonna bring more people online because this is going dangerously low. It's going to the point where if the coin continues to decline in value, this is going to continue to go down, right? Putting the network at risk. So doing this is actually going to revitalize the network and it's going to secure the network, especially with a coin this small, right? This literally the downtrend was going to continue down, especially if that price continued to go down, because unfortunately most of these miners are at a loss. So this is something they actually did need and that does benefit them. Okay. So now let's look at the numbers, right? So we came up with this 3.5 petahash is what the current overall hash rate is, right? So now, doing some quick little math, right? Again, easy math. We'll put it at, let's ballpark it. Let's play around with this. So this is how crazy it is, right? Let's do just 350 units, right? So 350 units times the 9 terahash that each unit's going to produce. It gives us a total of 3,150 terahash, okay? So we plug that in. So with that small amount, with only 350 units coming out, it's going to add an additional 3.15 petahash. Okay? The entire network is currently only 3.5 petahash. Okay? That is how dramatic of a difference these miners are going to make. Okay? The odds of them only releasing 350 units, pretty small. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. It seems extremely weird for them to only mass produce 350 units. Okay? Again, it's possible. These are all theoretical projections, but it's more so to give you an idea of how big of an effect these miners are going to have on the overall network and how that's going to affect your profitability. Okay? So even just adding these 350 units, which I highly doubt is going to happen, but let's say theoretically that's what it's going to be. Let's go into our rewards. Okay, so here they had it listed at 650. The other ones were like 730. So let's put it in the middle. Let's say it's 700, right? At that point, it will be halved, right? So we're going to earn now 350 handshake. Let's go to the price. The price was, we're going to multiply it by 0.02358. So it'll go down to $8.25, but then minus your electrical cost of $5, it's gonna net you about $3. Okay, and again, that's only if they only release 350 units. Not very likely at all whatsoever. Okay. So that's just how much of a change. Again, we have no idea. I'm not even going to really do other projections because it's going to be such a shock to the system, right? Again, I just want to give you this ballpark just so you know that all it's going to take is 350 units to double that, okay? So again, not very many. But the one thing to take into account is that when this thing does release, it's almost not going to be theoretical. It's almost going to be 100% that everything that's currently on the network will no longer be on the network. Okay, because at that point, these things that were barely profitable are not going to be profitable at all. So all those HS6s and everything below, essentially everything on the network, is most likely going to get retired, right? At least unplugged, right? Maybe one day if they have a bull run and it goes crazy, which again, like we said, it could, right? It has such a small market cap that back to all-time highs, it would be like a 30 something X, right? Then at that point, those guys would become profitable. But at least for now, while we're in this downtrend, they're definitely going to be turned off, right? This downtrend can get worse. It can be sideways for the whole next year. We may have pumps and dumps here and there. It may actually go up. We don't really know. But again, I like to plan worst case scenario. I like to plan that it's going to be in this range for the year. That's kind of what I'm basing my thesis off of, right? So to me, it's not looking good. This is definitely, out of the new ones, this is definitely the riskiest because of that. It's really, really going to be determined on how many units they release, especially this one. The other ones, it's a big factor, yes. But in this one, again, only 300 and, what was it, 350 units, guys. It's going to affect it that much. I highly, highly doubt they're going to release that many. I would say a bare minimum, they'll release 1,000. Right, so we can do that calculation real quick. So that one's easy math. It's going to be 9 times 1,000, so it'll be 9,000 terahash, which is 9 petahash, right? So at that point, it's like a what, 2.5? Let's ballpark it. Let's say it's a 3x. Okay, if you're getting 700, we'll divide that by the 3. 233. That's how many Handshake we'll be earning if we divide that by 3. So now let's multiply that by 0.02358. $5.50. But again, we got to minus that $5 for electricity. So 50-cent profit, right? If that were to happen. Again, we don't know. We might get surprised and they release only 250 units. We don't know. Again, highly, highly doubtful that they're going to mass produce something with such a small amount, but it is possible, right? Again, like we talked about in the spaces, they were specifically mentioning that, but I doubt it. But again, the main purpose of this video, again, there's not much profitability to be had, especially considering one other huge factor, and that is the halving. So Handshake is going to have a halving come, depends on the block how it falls, but it's going to be either late April or early May, right? So on top of that, on top of how hard this is going to get hit, those rewards are going to get cut in half from there. Okay, so it's going to take a lot of bullish action for this thing to go up. Okay, it's not looking too good. This is definitely the biggest degen move at all of them. It's also the most enticing though because it's so cheap, right? MSRP was 2K, street price is 3K, but realistically, guys, it's not looking good, especially with this delay. You can make the case to try to buy one now if they would have been in hand, then you'd have, what, 4 or 5 months? But with this delay, at the earliest, we're going to get it mid-February. That gives you, what, like 2 months before the halving? Not looking good. And that's if it doesn't get delayed more, right? Who's to say it doesn't get delayed all the way to the halving, which is another possibility. Imagine that, doing it, and then you get it on the day of the halving, right? Good luck. So it's just something to really consider about. I know this one's the most enticing. It was enticing to me also. I'm still going to run more projections and look at it, but I'm probably not going to degen. This one's even too much of a degen move for me. Again, the main thing that to me was enticing about it was the fact that I can have one full-size miner and this guy on a 30 amp circuit. That was one kind of cool, neat feature with it, because typically if you have 30 amp circuits, you're only going to be able to run one full-size miner. Meaning like one miner, let's say the KA3, that's at 3,100 watts, you would only be able to run one of those, sized ASICs on that circuit. Versus with this one, because it's only 2,000 watts, you'd be able to throw one of these guys on there and actually run both on that same 30 amp circuit. So if you're in a position where you're limited on that, which I am, I only have 3 30 amp circuits to play with, right? So that gives me the option of running one additional, which I do have space for one additional. Still debating on what to get. Ideally, I've been wanting to get a Bitcoin miner to be the last one, but the prices haven't gone down far enough as to where I would like. And chances are that may not be the king come the next bull market. We'll do a video kind of deep diving into why I think they actually might get beat out by another vendor this time. But yeah, guys, just wanted to give you all my overall thoughts and how this guy's probably not going to be a good move, right? Unless something comes out last minute that it can do see a coin as well, then maybe depending on the stats and profitability there, that might be something to look at. But currently, they haven't mentioned it. They haven't talked about it. I don't think it's going to happen. But again, guys, this one, it's enticing again because of that. And it's enticing because it would also pretty much be the whole network, right? And I don't see Gold Shell coming out with anything even within the next year or two to compete with it. At the earliest, maybe next year, maybe next spring or something. So the only way this would make sense is if you're super bullish on HNS and you think it's going to go up significantly in the next coming months. But again, they don't really do much advertising. They don't really do social media too much. They don't really put stuff out there. Like even just trying to research them, they don't really put much stuff out there, right? It's very decentralized. Again, that's their big thing. It's top level domains, which again is interesting, but I don't see the popularity or hype or anything really coming to it. I see it going up eventually, but it's not something I'd be bullish on, or versus something like with CKB with that Nervous Network miner. I'm bullish on CKB overall, so that's why that one is so appealing. And same with Kadena, right? It's one that I've been DCing into even before getting the miner. I already have a Kadena miner, actually. I'm just going to add this one on top of that. So those are the reason I'm keeping those, right? And I'm definitely interested in those. When I saw that, I was excited about it. This one, it was interesting because of the fact that it's something new, something different, but it's just overall looking at the network, looking at the profitability, what it's looking like this next year. I'm not really hyped on anything happening this year with them. Maybe something comes up, but overall, to me, not too interested in this guy. Interesting though because of how, small the network is and the potential there, but just overall, too much risk. Like this is one I would highly, highly not recommend unless the day it comes out, it turns out that they only released 100 units, then it's worth looking into. But again, it's Bitmain, they're a greedy ass big company. I don't see them releasing anything under 350. Realistically, my personal guess is it'll be at minimum, it'll be 1,000 of these, right? But again, pure speculation. Do not know. Do your own thing, do your own research, come to your conclusion, right? I'm just giving you the tools for you to look at it, what you need to be looking at, and how to find these things, right? So hopefully you got something out of the video. If you haven't watched the other ones, hopefully this will get you kind of in tune with what to do, with how to predict these things, how to look at real profitability so you can make better decisions, right? Again, these ASICs only do one thing. They're a lot of money, so you gotta research. You gotta be in tune with it. Don't just go off of somebody else's shill and, do this, oh, it's gonna make X amount of money. Do your research. Take their word for it, right? Take in somebody else's word for it, but then do your own research on top of that, right? Again, open your horizons. Look at different things. Do those calculations, right? Research that project. See if it makes sense to you, right? Maybe you're in that field and you see something that everybody else doesn't, right? Again, putting it out there for you to learn. So again, guys, thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Especially comment, guys, if you're thinking about getting one, right? Let me know. We'll see. I don't think it's going to be too many comments. But thank you again for watching, guys, and I am out.